Hello, kindergartners. I was wondering, have you been seeing any frogs when you've been walking around this spring? Maybe you've seen a little tiny frog hopping in the tall green grass. Maybe you've even caught one for a little while in your hands. Or maybe you've heard them croaking, or even seen one jump in a pond. There are lots of frogs out in the spring, and this story is one about a frog long ago, a very special frog, a little different than the ones we probably see. But you never know. So, this story is called The Frog Prince. One fine evening, a young princess put on her bonnet and her shoes and went out to take a walk by herself in the woods. And when she came to a cool spring of water with a rose growing nearby, she sat herself down to rest for a while. Now she had a golden ball in her hand, which was her favorite thing to play with. She was always tossing it up into the air and catching it again as it fell. After a while, she threw the ball up so high that she missed catching it as it fell, and the ball bounded away and rolled along the ground until at last it fell down into the spring of water. The princess looked into the spring after her ball, but it was very deep, so deep that she couldn't see to the bottom of the water. She began to cry and said, "Alas, if only I could get my ball again, I would give all my fine clothes and jewels and everything I have in the world." While she was speaking, a frog put its head out of the water and said, "Princess, why do you weep so bitterly?" "Alas," she said, "what can you do for me, you nasty frog? My golden ball has fallen into the water." The frog said, "I do not want your pearls and jewels and fine clothes, but if you will love me and let me live with you and eat from off your golden plate and sleep on your pillow, I will bring you your ball again." "What nonsense," thought the princess, "this silly frog is talking. He can never even get out of the spring to come visit me, though he may be able to get my ball for me, and therefore I will tell him that he can have what he asks for." So she said to the frog, "Well, if you will bring me my ball, I will do all you ask." Then the frog put his head down and dove deep under the water, and after a little while he came up again with the golden ball in his mouth. He threw it to the edge of the spring. As soon as the young princess saw her ball, she ran to pick it up, and she was so overjoyed to have it in her hand again that she never thought about the frog, but ran home with her ball as fast as she could. The frog called after her, "Stay, princess, and take me with you as you said." But she did not stop to hear a word. The next day, just as the princess had sat down to dinner, she heard a strange noise. Tap, tap, plash, plash, as if something was coming up the marble staircase. And soon after there was a gentle knock at the door. A little voice cried out and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here. And mind the words that you and I said by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." Then the princess ran to the door and opened it, and there she saw the frog, whom she had quite forgotten. At this sight she was sadly frightened, and shutting the door as fast as she could, she came back to her seat at the table. The king, her father, seeing that something had frightened her, asked her what was the matter. "There is a nasty frog," said she, "at the door, that lifted my golden ball for me out of the spring this morning. I told him that he could live with me here, thinking that he could never get out of the spring, but there he is at the door, and he wants to come in." While she was speaking, the frog knocked again at the door and said, "Open the door, my princess dear, open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." Then the king said to the young princess, "As you have given your word, you must keep it, so go and let him in." She did so, and the frog hopped into the room, and then straight on, tap, tap, plash, plash, from the bottom of the room to the top, until he came up close to the table where the princess sat. "Pray lift me up upon the chair," said he to the princess, "and let me sit next to you." As soon as she had done this, the frog said, "Put your plate nearer to me that I may eat out of it." This she did, and when the frog had eaten as much as he could, he said, "Now I am tired. Carry me upstairs and put me to bed." And the princess, though she was very unwilling, took him up in her hand and put him upon the pillow of her own bed, where he slept all night long. As soon as it was light, the frog jumped up, hopped downstairs, and went out of the house. "Now then," thought the princess, "at last he's gone, and I shall be troubled with him no more." But she was mistaken, for when night came again, she heard the same tapping at the door, and the frog came once more and said, "Open the door, my princess dear, open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." And when the princess opened the door, the frog came in, and slept upon her pillow as before, until the morning broke. And the third night he did the same. But when the princess awoke on the following morning, she was astonished to see, instead of the frog, there was a handsome prince, looking at her with the most beautiful eyes she had ever seen, and standing at the head of her bed. He told her that he had been enchanted by a spiteful fairy who had changed him into a frog. He had been fated so to stay a frog until some princess should take him out of the spring and let him eat from her plate and sleep on her pillow for 3 nights. "You," said the prince, "have broken the cruel spell. Now I have nothing to wish for except that you would go with me into my father's kingdom, where I would marry you and love you as long as you live." The young princess, you may be sure, was not too long in saying yes to all of this. And as they spoke, a brightly colored coach drove up, with 8 beautiful white horses, decked with plumes of feathers and a golden harness. Behind the coach rode the prince's servant, faithful Heinrich, who had bewailed the misfortunes of his dear master during the spell for so long that his heart had well nigh burst. Then they all took leave of the king and got into the coach with the 8 horses. They all set out, full of joy and merriment, for the prince's kingdom, which they reached safely, and there they lived happily a great many years. Snip, snap, snout, this tale is told.